What's up, everybody? And today we're checking out American Civil War from the European perspective. This is by the Armchair Historian. We've watched quite a few videos of the Armchair Historian over the five years I've been on YouTube now. 6 years? Oh my God, it'll be 6 years this year. Holy. Yeah. Over the past 6 years, I've watched a few videos of the Armchair Historian, and they're absolutely phenomenal. Brilliant videos. So I'm very, very excited to know more about the American Civil War, especially from a European perspective, because I am a European. I'm also an American. So this is going to be really fun. But first, a quick word from our new sponsor. Okay, if you've watched some of my videos in the past, you'll have seen the amount of books I used to have in the background of my videos. It's because I'm obsessed with books. There's two different hobbies, isn't there? There's collecting books and reading books, and I'm obsessed with both hobbies. Now, if there was something to happen in the world, let's say an apocalypse, there's only one book I would now grab off that shelf, and it's this. This is The Four. And when it's saying The Four, it specifically means a survival guide to 4 different apocalypses. Apocalypses? Global warming, a pandemic, nuclear winter, and zombies. This thing is a masterpiece for many different reasons. Firstly, I want to say, I've done Kickstarters in the past, and this company, and it's hard, it's very hard. This company raised over $600,000 through a Kickstarter, which blows my mind. Just that one fact alone blows my mind. But what they've done is they've created this 400-page, absolutely fantastic bit of kit that shows you how to survive any 4 of them apocalypse. Anyway, I've got a tab in here because there's one specific page. Well, there's actually a few pages dedicated to it. There's a specific part I want to show you. You know how much I love me mushrooms. Look, you know it, guys. I've got my mushroom stuff. I got my mushroom. I love mushrooms. So when I saw that it had a part in here about edible mushrooms and toxic mushrooms, I had to check it out. I was like, look, if I'm going to push this book and it's legit going to be a good guide for survival, I want to make sure that it's actually decent with the mushroom department. And it is. Look at this. Lion's mane, hen of the woods, oyster mushrooms, hedgehog mushrooms, morel mushrooms, puffballs. Look at that. Lobster mushrooms, golden chanterelles, regular chanterelles. I'm blown away. And it's even got toxic mushrooms as well. So you got to be careful, obviously, when you're picking them. It's got the death angels, the death cap and everything. Absolutely phenomenal. And there's one other thing I want to say about this, right? I was worried because the drawings in here are stunning. I was worried because of the whole AI situation, but no. All the drawings in this book are done with actual artists actually illustrating them with no AI whatsoever. And so for that, I applaud you. Check it out. There's a link down below in the description. You've got to go check it out because it's absolutely phenomenal. I cannot recommend it enough. It is an absolutely fantastic bit of kit if you're into the same type of stuff that I'm into. And listen, I'm a former Royal Marines Commando. I know how to survive, and even I'm learning stuff out of this book. So, if you haven't already, go to the description down below, check it out. I highly recommend it. I wouldn't have it as a sponsor if I didn't. You know me. Okay, so let's get into this. I'm really, really excited to learn more about this. Let's turn subbies on and let's get straight into it.
It is a cold morning in the winter of 1861.
Classic.
And a northern lawyer is enjoying breakfast by the fireplace.
Okay.
He reaches for the morning issue of the New York Times, hoping for news on the conflict with the rebels. All the papers have been fixated on the...
Just want to remind you, this video is like 4 or 5 years old, and it makes me so happy to watch a channel using animations like this without using AI. That makes me really happy. That makes me really, really happy.
Diplomatic incident last month with the United Kingdom. A ship smuggling rebel ambassadors had been intercepted by the Union. But surely, the situation can't be as serious as the paper suggests. The affair will probably be resolved in the coming days. But as the lawyer begins reading the paper, he is shocked. The front page story is much different today. French troops have apparently crossed the border from Mexico into Texas in support of the Confederacy.
What? The French were in support of the Confederacy? No wonder the Confederacy lost. Of course they lost. The French were on their side. Hey! I'm just joking. I'm just joking.
Has escalated.
The Armchair Historian. Let's do this. I wonder if he draws all this himself or whether he has like a whole team to do it, because it's quite impressive, isn't it? It is quite impressive.
Hi, I'm Griffin Johnson, the armchair historian.
All right, mate.
What you just saw is, of course, not what really happened.
Oh.
The British and French did not intervene in the American Civil War, and in this video...
Oh. Well, there goes my joke. You know what I mean?
We're going to explain why.
Fuming.
Additionally, we'll explore how other European powers responded, and ultimately why the conflict did not cross the Atlantic.
Didn't the British just sit back and think, what the fuck's going on over there? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Before we look at the European perspective, let's take a moment to thank our sponsor.
All right, let's skip the sponsor real quick, guys. If you know, you know. Where are we at? Right here.
Even before the first shots were fired on Fort Sumter, foreign powers were watching the secession crisis in the United States very closely. The US in 1861 wasn't the global superpower it is today, but it was integral to the increasingly interconnected economies of the world.
Okay.
In addition, America represented the still uncertain experiment of democracy in the eyes of Europe.
Yeah, of course it did.
If the United States fell apart, it would make a strong case for the instability and danger of democratic reforms.
Ooh.
With that being said, direct involvement in the faraway American War was not viable for most states in Europe. Sending men and materiel across the Atlantic was simply impractical for all but the largest empires, and Europe had no shortage of conflicts of its own to deal with.
Yeah, that's true. There's also definitely a perspective here in Britain. As the British was fighting against slavery, there was obviously a bias as to what side the British people were on when it comes to the American Civil War. In fact, in Manchester, where I'm from, Manchester, the best city in the world, right? The best city in the world, Manchester. It was one of the biggest cities in the world for the cotton industry, okay? And Manchester was one of the first cities, I don't know if it was the first, but it was one of the first cities that basically said, we're not going to take any cotton picked by slaves. And in doing so, Abraham Lincoln sent a letter to Manchester thanking them. And now we have a statue of Lincoln in Manchester as well. So a little bit of history for you there.
That being said, many countries did get involved indirectly, so let's run through some of them now, before we take a deep dive into the two nations who were closest to intervening.
Okay.
First, we have the shrinking papal state, ruled by Pope Pius IX. In 1862,
what side were they on?
A Confederate ambassador met with the Pope to convince him of the righteousness of the Southern cause. The ambassador came away from the meeting utterly convinced he had won Pius over, despite having to admit neither he nor Confederate President Jefferson Davis was Catholic, and outright refusing the pontiff's suggestion that the Confederacy consent to gradual emancipation of its slaves. The Pope later wrote a letter to Davis, which was enthusiastically mistranslated as a formal recognition of the Confederate States of America as an independent nation, which was soon turned into wartime propaganda.
Of course, if there's anything to do with religion, they're going to use it as propaganda. That just seems like a given, doesn't it?
Next nation on our list is the Kingdom of Prussia. Several Prussians were sent to fight in or observe the war on both sides, and throughout the Civil War, these Prussian officers were consistently impressed with themselves by comparison to what they saw as disorganized and poorly trained American armies.
You have to also remember, from a European perspective, is you're seeing a lot of people in America fighting that weren't, like, it wasn't long ago before these people were actually living in their country. Like, America's brand new at this point still. It's a baby still. So in the eyes of a lot of Europeans at this point, they've probably got relatives there, probably got family there, they probably have biases, they probably they probably have a deep connection with them through family more than anything right now.
In particular, Captain Justus Schreiber scoffed at how little formal training both sides had given their officers before the war.
Americana.
Schreiber and other Prussians did take note of the advances in engineering and defensive tactics made during the war, but attributed most of their success to the vastly different terrain and other circumstances unique to North America.
Yeah.
While many Prussian-born officers did observe or command in the conflict, the kingdom as a whole was most concerned with unifying Germany, and was not significantly influenced by the Civil War,
Yeah, makes
coming
sense.
away from their observations more certain than ever of their own superiority.
Yeah, they were too busy doing their own thing. That's all it is summarized, isn't it? That's probably what it's going to be summarized for a lot of these countries,
Further
just too busy
west,
doing their own
the
thing.
dwindling Spanish Empire took the Civil War as an opportunity to reclaim some of its lost American colonies and occupied the Dominican Republic in 1861. The Spanish faced resistance almost immediately, and in 1863, full-scale rebellion began. Soon, Spain had lost control of all but the capital of Santo Domingo,
Wow.
and they unsuccessfully fought the rebellion for 2 more years before withdrawing completely.
Wow. Good on them for holding
Others
their
sided
own.
more firmly with the Union. On the Italian peninsula, the leaders of the mighty empire of San Marino wrote to President Lincoln to show support of his cause and to offer Lincoln citizenship.
Wow.
Lincoln gratefully replied, accepting the offer and establishing the first diplomatic relations between the US and San Marino.
Did not know
As
that.
for the Kingdom of Italy, they were far more concerned with consolidating their new territory. Finally, to the
Again, kind of just worrying about their own shit at this point, weren't they?
east, the Russian Empire, which saw a strong United States as an important counterweight to the British Empire, vocally supported the Union, but it never extended an offer of military aid.
Huh.
Like the rest of Europe's leaders, the Russians were unwilling to entangle themselves in a bloody faraway conflict on another continent.
I know it wasn't around this time, but when was it again that America bought Alaska from Russia? I can't remember what year it was. Obviously, it was way after this. But it does make you wonder the progression. I'd love to watch a video on the progression of relations between Russia and America throughout the whole lifetime of America. I think that would be such an interesting video.
The only 2 nations that came anywhere close to getting involved were the British and French empires.
Classic.
In both nations, public opinion
If there's any excuse for the British and French to go against each other, they'll do it. But hey, do you know what? Do you know what's amazing? The British and the French, we're like siblings that just banter off each other all the time. We've been fighting for gone 1,000 years now. And yet, if anyone outside, these days anyway, not back in the day, but these days, like if someone starts picking on France, England's one of the first to be like, we got you back. And same the other way as well. Like if someone starts picking on England, the French are like, we got you back. It's like this weird rivalry that we've had, but it's made a bond. Does that make sense?
was largely divided along class lines. The landowners tended to support the wannabe aristocrats of the South, while the middle and working classes tended to support the Union.
Yeah.
This is a bit of an oversimplification.
Hence why Manchester, which was, if you know anything about British history, the North was quite, and it still is to this day, like dismissed. All the money that England gets primarily goes to the South. And that still happens today, unfortunately. And so you can see more of the Union style thinking up in, Manchester's a very progressive place, right? Like the inventions of the railway system and the splitting of the atom and the computer being made there and the fighting for certain rights. Like it's quite a progressive place, Manchester. And so you can see why that's the case.
But while the public discourse surrounding the conflict was nuanced and varied, it also was almost entirely irrelevant.
Yeah.
People hotly debated, and the newspapers printed countless think pieces and exposés, and yet the decisions about whether Europe would intervene in the American Civil War were made by a mere handful of powerful figures.
Classic.
In France, Emperor Napoleon III, the nephew of the far more successful Napoleon Bonaparte, sought to expand the territory and influence of the French Empire around the world. This initially led him to see the American Civil War as an opportunity. Ever since 1823, the American Monroe Doctrine had prevented the European powers from extending their influence into the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah.
But with the House now divided against itself, the Americans were once again vulnerable to European exploitation.
It's crazy considering how volatile America was at this point, and now you look at it. Like, that speed of growth has to be one of the fastest in the world. I mean, China's speed of growth has been quite substantial as well, hasn't it, to be honest with you? Maybe even quicker in recent years. But still.
A mere 8 months after the Civil War broke out, Napoleon invaded the Republic of Mexico. His army swiftly toppled the government and installed an Austrian noble as Emperor Maximilian I of Mexico.
Wow.
US officials were outraged about this, but there was nothing they could do as long as the Confederates controlled the Mexican border. Eager to protect his new puppet, Napoleon wanted to recognize the independence of the Confederacy, but Union diplomats made it very clear that recognition of the rebels would lead to all-out war, and France was unwilling to take the risk.
Yeah.
Without allies, and with the growing kingdom of Prussia waiting to strike in Europe, Napoleon decided not to go to war without the support of Britain.
Wow.
Unfortunately for Napoleon, that support was unlikely.
Yeah, this is not going to happen, is it?
As the leaders of Britain had few reasons to get involved.
Yeah.
While Prime Minister Lord Palmerston and other ministers were sympathetic to the Confederacy, the cabinet recognized that it was not economical for them to go to war.
Always a business mind with Britain, isn't it? It's all about business. And it's kind of annoying, really.
British financial institutions were heavily invested in railways and other projects with Union territory, and northern states of the US were some of the chief importers of British and French luxury and manufactured goods.
Yeah, you have to remember at this point, Britain was just like a manufacturing dominance of the world. Like, they were building all sorts of stuff, especially in the northern cities like Manchester and Liverpool and Birmingham, all them lot.
Furthermore, by 1861, 40% of Great Britain's wheat imports came from the Union. France was similarly reliant on Union food imports, and Napoleon III was no doubt wary of having to tell a hungry French populace, let them eat cotton. Both nations did have economic ties to the South, with Southern cotton fueling much of the British and French textile industries. Unlike
Like I said, that changed actually quite a lot.
Northern grain and trade markets, however, Southern cotton could be replaced. Both countries had built up sizable stockpiles by 1861, and when the surplus ran out, subsequent cotton shortages were offset by imports from the British territories of Egypt and India. Besides economics, diplomacy also played a major role in keeping Europe out of the Civil War. Confederate diplomats were inexperienced and clumsy.
What an interesting time period for Europe in general during the Civil War, during these years. It seems like a time of, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like an intermediary time. Intermediary time between large events. Do you get what I'm saying? It's like a very quiet time, although there was a lot of stuff going on.
Chosen by President Davis for personal and political reasons rather than for diplomatic skill. Davis was convinced that all he had to do was dangle the South's great King Cotton before the European powers, who would then eagerly offer their support. The Union, meanwhile, engaged in more skillful and subtle diplomacy, which culminated in the diplomatic masterstroke that was Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. By announcing to the world that the Union was fighting to end the institution of slavery, he effectively made the Civil War a moral conflict. By making this narrative clear, Lincoln ensured that politicians in Europe could not express their support for the Confederacy without being seen as pro-slavery.
Yeah, and obviously, if you know anything about history, you know Britain's relationship there with slavery at this point.
As a result of these economic and diplomatic factors, there was never a serious push within the British government to get the Empire involved with the Civil War. The closest the Empire ever came to intervening was the Trent Affair, when two Confederate diplomats attempting to travel to Europe aboard a British ship were intercepted and seized by the Union Navy. The boarding of a British vessel and the abduction of its passengers infuriated the British public, parliament, and cabinet, and a demand for the prisoners' release and a full apology was immediately sent to Washington, D.C.
Wow, I did not know that.
Thousands of additional troops were dispatched to Canada, and the Royal Navy was placed on high alert.
I didn't know that. I'd love to know more about that as well. I love the Armchair Historian. These are the type of videos I watch in my own time, not on this channel, all the time. I'm a bit of a history nerd.
Lincoln recognized the danger and promptly complied with the British demand, releasing the diplomats and issuing a vague faux apology to satisfy the British.
Incredible.
Aside from the close call of the Trent Affair, no European nation ever came close to intervening in the American Civil War. Even if the combined...
Like I said, though, they didn't intervene, but there was definitely a bias among the people, especially here in Northern England anyway. It's very obvious.
might of Britain and France could have changed the course of the war. They were both ultimately deterred from involvement by the skillful diplomacy of the Union and, of course, economic concerns.
Yeah.
Although there were factions in Europe that supported the Confederacy, in a rare moment, practical considerations outweighed ideology. In the end, the nations of Europe chose to leave the American Civil War to the Americans.
Yeah. I'd love to know your thoughts on that and the idea that Britain didn't get involved or any European country got involved. And I'd love to know what you think in the comments and how that might have changed the war. Do you think it would have changed the war as significantly as it did? Do you think it would have changed the outcome? I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. I will leave a link down below to the Armchair Historians YouTube channel. If you've not already gone and subscribed, go and do it because they have some brilliant videos, like legitimately brilliant. Also, thank you to our new sponsor. And until next time, I love you all. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.